Welcome back to Wake Up America. I'm Rachel Roller. President Joe Biden has now officially been in office for over 100 days. Now, this administration is already being defined by an ever-growing spending spree, a push to raise taxes, and a migrant surge unlike anything we've seen before. Joining us now to discuss, Texas Senator Ted Cruz. Welcome to Wake Up America, Senator Cruz.
Rachel, good morning. Good to be with you.
Nice to have you. Now, we'll get to the speech in a minute, but first, I want to ask you about your new op-ed in the Wall Street Journal. You talk about titling it, "Your Woke Money is No Good Here," saying corporations have taken advantage of Republicans for too long, and you're declaring that you're no longer going to accept their PAC dollars. Can you elaborate?
Well, that's exactly right. We have seen the rise of the woke corporations. We've seen big business CEOs who've decided to throw their lot in with the radical left and to become the woke enforcers of the Democrats. We're seeing these big company CEOs blasting the Georgia voter integrity law, blasting the Texas voter integrity law. And in most cases, they haven't even read the law. They don't know what's in it, but they've decided that giving in to the angry left-wing mob is the path they're going to take. I think most egregiously was Major League Baseball yanking the All-Star game out of Atlanta and moving it to Denver. Now, ironically, Atlanta is a 51% African-American city. They pulled it out of there and moved it to Denver, which is only 9% African-American. So that's how much they care about racial justice, that they're going to impose a $100 million hit on the small businesses and the workers in Atlanta to demonstrate their wokeness. And so what I wrote in the op-ed yesterday is I said enough is enough, that if you're going to decide that you are nothing but an economic weapon to attack the people, to attack the principles of the Constitution and of liberty, that I want nothing to do with you. And so I announced as of yesterday that I will accept no money from any corporate PAC. Going forward, not a penny. You know, the last 9 years in the Senate, corporate PACs have contributed to my campaigns a total of about $2.6 million. And I've said no more, not another cent. If you're opposed to the people of this country, I don't want your money and I don't want your support.
It's a bold move. Now, speaking of funding someone who does want your money, President Biden continuing to roll out a bevy of spending bills. Now, that total is roughly $6 trillion right now. We're taking a look at just breaking down where all that money is essentially. What do you think as far as what will this do driving the economy down and the national debt up? In the president's address, he said we can afford it. Can we?
We can't remotely. I mean, the president's address was, I can sum it up in 3 words: boring but radical. The tones were deliberately boring. They were, the entire first 100 days has been, I think Joe Biden has made a political decision to not make any noise, to not drive any headlines, just to be as boring as possible. And I think that probably is a smart political decision, but he's doing it to mask the radical policy agenda that he is pushing forward. And this has been the most radical policy agenda any president has ever laid out in their first 100 days. He has basically handed the keys over. He's handed the agenda over to Elizabeth Warren and Bernie Sanders and AOC, and it is the radical socialists who are driving it. So you noted he's proposing $6 trillion in new spending, just massive money. Most of which has nothing to do with what he claims. So he has a $2.6 trillion infrastructure bill. Only 5% of that bill is roads and bridges. 95% of it is other spending priorities from the far left. And you know, I've joked with all this spending, I hope, please, nobody tell the Democrats what comes after $1 trillion, because they're just, they're out of control. And he wants to pay for all of this with massive new taxes. And if you pay taxes, if you're working, your taxes are going up, because he wants to raise the individual income tax rates. He wants to raise the corporate tax rates. He wants to raise small business taxes. He wants to raise capital gains taxes. He wants to raise the death tax. And it's trillions of dollars of new taxes, exactly the wrong thing to do at a time when we're coming out of the pandemic and millions of small businesses are trying to survive. And Joe Biden and Kamala Harris's answer is we're going to raise your taxes and regulate you out of existence.
And Senator, something you just summed up there, the 3 words you said that speech would be, even before the speech had started, boring but radical. But I noticed after the speech, it was another 3 words that had you concerned and a bit fired up. It was "we the people." Why is that?
You know, the most extraordinary line of the speech was when Joe Biden said, "We the people is us, it's the government." And that is utter nonsense. No, Joe, that is not what "we the people" means. You need to go back to constitutional law. You need to go read the Constitution. The Constitution begins with "we the people." We the people is the American people. We the people is who has sovereignty, not government. It's not. It is exactly backwards. And I think that portion of the speech was radical at a level. It was like King Louis of France saying, "L'État c'est moi," I am the state. That's what Joe Biden was saying. He is the government and he is the people. No, Joe, you're not the people. And that's really dangerous and scary.
The president did not spend a lot of time on in his speech was the crisis at the southern border. And when he did, his words didn't really seem to hit home with lawmakers. Let's take a quick look at that.
If you believe we need to secure the border, pass it because it has a lot of money for high-tech border security. If you believe in a pathway to citizenship, pass it. It's over 11 million undocumented folks, the vast majority of here overstaying visas. Pass it. We can actually, if you actually want to solve a problem, I've sent a bill to take a close look at it. We also have to get at the root problem of why people are fleeing.
All right, Senator, this was about an hour in. Seems his words are putting you to sleep, which I know is something you owned online, something I appreciate about you. You never shy away from a good story, but I don't think you were alone in that situation either.
Look, the speech went over an hour, and it was boring. I was, I'm amazed I stayed awake as long as I did. I mean, it really was, and it's by design. He's trying to. His tones are dulcet and calm and nothing to see here, just a sort of doddering grandfather. And it masks, look, what he's saying on immigration, there is an absolute crisis unfolding on the border that he causes. And he's not offering to fix it. He's not committing to fix it. He's saying the policies he's proposing are making it worse. And I'll tell you something interesting, Rachel. I was actually thinking about this afternoon. So this is the 9th State of the Union address that I've been to.
Okay.
And usually State of the Union addresses are interesting because particularly if you're in the party out of power, so if it's a Democratic president. So I went to 4 with Barack Obama, and you're sitting there normally, and you're on every sentence you're trying to figure out, okay, do I applaud, do I not applaud, do I stand or do I not stand? And it's kind of like a, Jane Fonda aerobics exercise sometimes. Stand, sit down, stand, sit down, stand, sit down. One of the weird things, and it didn't occur to me last night, but I was thinking about it today, Republicans didn't have anything to stand or applaud for. I mean, this was a uniformly partisan speech in a way that was weird. Obama would always have lines in there designed to get Republicans on their feet, designed to get Republicans applauding, and Joe Biden didn't give a damn. He didn't want our applause. It was a speech that was directed to the Democrats, and it was, we are hard left, the socialist regime is here. And I think that's one of the reasons the speech was so boring, is there was nothing, it was so left-wing that there was nothing for any reasonable person to applaud for.
But the message, Senator, is unity, is it not? No, but the real...
Not anymore. Notice he didn't talk about unity in the speech. So at the inauguration, he talked about unity. But there was no reference to unity. His words of unity is on immigration. He sent over the most radical amnesty bill that's ever been filed by any president in history. It grants citizenship to everyone, and it has open borders. And his unity message is, pass my amnesty bill. That's his unity message, is submit because we are the new overlords, because as he explained, he's we the people. I mean, it really is radical at a level that is dangerous and that threatens our fundamental liberties.
Well, when it comes to immigration, the real issue at hand last night was not whether or not you were awake for the speech, which people love to fire off online about, but the crisis at the border. Now, as someone who represents Texas, how is his immigration policy impacting the American people?
It is an absolute travesty what's happening. A few weeks ago, I took a group of 19 senators down to the border. and to see firsthand what was happening there. And we went and visited the Donna facility, which is this giant tent city that has been built to handle the massive surge of illegal immigration. The Donna tent city is built to accommodate 1,000 people. With COVID restrictions, its maximum safe capacity is 250 people. When we visited there were 4,200 people housed in it. It was 1,700% its capacity. We saw one after the other of these giant cages, Biden cages, and kids in cages. You know, for 4 years, the media went on and on about kids in cages, kids in cages. They never acknowledged that Barack Obama built the cages. And now Joe Biden is building more cages. They're bigger and they're more full. And in the cages, you saw little boys and little girls side by side. They weren't 6 feet apart. They weren't 3 feet apart. They weren't even 3 inches apart. They're lying on the floor, no beds, no mats, no cots, side by side, wrapped up in reflective emergency blankets. The rate of COVID positivity in the Donna facility is over 10%. It is an absolute public health nightmare. And because of this is preventable. This was the result of deliberate political decisions Joe Biden made to end the Remain in Mexico policy, to return to the failed catch and release policy. And we're projected to have over 2 million illegal immigrants coming to this country this year, the highest rate in 20 years. And Joe Biden intends to do nothing about it. In fact, you may recall he handed responsibility for the border over to Kamala Harris, and Kamala said, "I want nothing to do with it." And she promptly said no and ran away, and nobody's in charge. And this crisis is getting worse and worse and worse. It's the worst I've ever seen.
And that's something I think so many people left scratching their heads after watching last night. The president again said he has confidence in the vice president to lead the immigration efforts. How could that be possible if she hasn't made a single trip to the border? So in some ways, I'm actually sympathetic to them because they're in an impossible situation. Biden and Harris have made promises to the radical left. They've promised the radical left on immigration that they won't enforce the laws and they won't deport anyone. If they're going to stick to those promises, there's no way to solve this problem. It is impossible to solve if you refuse to enforce the law and you refuse to deport people who come here illegally. And so given that, I think they know it's impossible to solve. And so their strategy instead is to cover it up. It's just to hide it. Because if they can't fix it, they have to pretend it doesn't matter. The reason Biden hasn't been to the border, the reason Kamala hasn't been to the border, is if they came, a bunch of reporters would come and they'd cover the news, and they don't want the news covered. You know, when I brought 19 senators to the border, I asked for the press to come with us. And the Biden administration had blocked all the press from seeing what was happening. And they did so with us as well. And so I and several other senators, we pulled out our cell phone and we took pictures and videos of the horrific conditions. And you may recall Joe Biden sent a political minder down from Washington to try to stop us, who jumped in front of my phone, tried to block the footage. Right.
And she was sent to try to cover it up. That's their only strategy. And so the reason Biden didn't talk about it at his speech this week is he doesn't want the American people to know. And when he says Kamala's in charge, she's not going to do anything about it because her strategy, like his, is cover it up and hope nobody notices.
And we were just showing some of that video and pictures that you took while at the border. Now, switching off of immigration for a moment, another point of focus in Washington is packing the Supreme Court, something President Biden said he would not do when campaigning. You're clearly very well versed in this topic, writing a book titled "One Vote Away: How a Single Supreme Court Seat Can Change History." As we know, House Democrats continue to push to expand the Supreme Court size from 9 to 13. How crucial is this to you to protect?
It is absolutely fundamental. And one of the great disappointments of Joe Biden's speech is he didn't say a word about it. He didn't say a word about the radical Democratic plans to pack the Supreme Court, to increase it from 9 justices to 13 justices, to immediately put 4 left-wing justices on the court. And this is something that has never happened in modern history. You know, as you know, FDR, when he was president, he wanted to pack the court. He tried to pack the court. And his own party, the Democratic Party, said, no, this would destroy the independence of the judiciary. This would destroy the rule of law. And his own party said no. The difference is today's Democrats are a lot more radical than the FDR Democrats. And you mentioned the book that I wrote a couple of months ago, One Vote Away. What that book does Each chapter focuses on a different constitutional right. So there's a chapter on free speech. There's a chapter on religious liberty. There's a chapter on the Second Amendment. And it's not an academic book. It is telling war stories. So before I was in the Senate, my job, I was a Supreme Court litigator. I argued cases before the U.S. Supreme Court. And so what I do in the book is I take the readers behind the curtain, inside, to understand really what's going on at the court. And I tell the stories of litigating some of the biggest landmark cases before the court. And Rachel, the amazing thing, and this is true in chapter after chapter, and when people read it, I think they learn a lot and they have fun, but it also blows them away that virtually all of our fundamental rights, the big landmark decisions upholding those rights, are 5-4. We're one vote away from those rights being taken away. And the reason that Joe Biden wants to pack the court is he wants to stick 4 left-wing justices on the court to take away your free speech rights and my free speech rights. He wants to take away our religious liberty rights. He wants to take away the right to keep and bear arms, effectively erase it from the Bill of Rights. And I think that is profoundly dangerous. It's the single greatest threat we have to our liberties. It's why I wrote the book, and actually I would encourage your viewers, go to Amazon or wherever you get books, One Vote Away. It was the #1 bestseller in the country on Amazon. And it helps you understand really what the stakes are, that if you want your kids and your grandkids to have the same freedom that you've been blessed to have, we got to stand up and prevent this.
And I think something people lose sight of. They're so caught up in the moment and not thinking about those future generations and the liberties we take for granted every day. Lastly, Senator Cruz, I know it's early, but many are wondering if you've given any thought about another presidential run in 2024. We know you've gone back and forth with former President Trump, and the question is, would you run against him if he did decide to run?
You know, that is a decision far in the future. He has not announced a campaign, and what I can tell you is I'm committed to fighting for the principles that I believe deeply in. Fighting for the principles of free enterprise, fighting for the principles of individual liberty, fighting for the principles of the Constitution and Bill of Rights. And when President Trump was president, I worked hand in hand with him every day and every week, and together we won big, big victories together, incredible victories. We saw economic prosperity, we saw the border secured, we saw the military rebuilt, and we saw an incredible legacy of principled constitutionalists put on the bench, on the Supreme Court and the Courts of Appeals. I was proud to work hand in hand with President Trump to win those victories, and I'm committed to keeping working night and day to keep moving those victories forward.
A cliffhanger like a true politician. Senator Ted Cruz, we truly appreciate your time. Thank you so much for joining us.
Hey, I'm Rob Finnerty. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please join the conversation in the comments below. Don't forget to subscribe, too. Hit the bell icon to be alerted to breaking news. And remember, there's a whole lot more on Newsmax TV, America's fastest growing cable news network. Newsmax TV, we're real news for real people.